Welcome to this episode of the Trainer Feed. I am your host. My name is Angel Sanchez. With me, I have our other host, our other co-host, David Bravo.
Hey, what's up, guys? Sorry, there's a truck below on the street going crazy because they're not letting him pass. So a lot of the
David's
honking.
got air horns in his apartment. He's got like a little foot pedal.
It's kind of like the People's Convoy, going through the block.
There you go. And then we have Mr. Jacques Delogier.
What's going on, everyone? How are we feeling this Friday? Glorious
He
Friday.
just came back from Hogwarts.
Oh, man. Yeah, we were in Florida for a few days. And Universal in Orlando, they have Hogsmeade and they have Diagon Alley. And I could just spend all day there, man. It's really worth going if you guys haven't gone. But yeah,
brings you back home.
Yeah, that's why I made a joke about the goblins in the bank. I was like, yeah, this is like going to school in England. Like, people are like, oh, this is where Alex, someone else asked. I said, oh, it's going to, I tell them, I was like, going to school in England isn't like Hogwarts. Like, it's not a real thing. Or like, that's
bullshit.
Not how. We don't wear robes. We did wear ties and shirts for a period of time. But anyway, it was a good time. You guys should definitely get to go.
Matching scarves.
Yeah, I mean, this private schools are a little bit like that, actually. And
you guys play Quidditch?
I wish we did, but
Quidditch seems fire.
I played Quidditch in school.
Did you? How did you play it?
So we played it broomsticks. And we used. First of all, I didn't play, but it was part of my. I think it was junior high school. It did. That's when Harry Potter the books came out. I think it was before the movies came out, and they had us do like. The broomsticks were the brooms, obviously, and you would run around with the broomstick in between your legs. And then they had these things that we use for dodgeball. So, obviously dodgeball, you use like a kickball, but then a couple of people got fucked up pretty bad with the kickball. So then they ended up using something that they called like a snowball, but it's really just like it's like a oversized cotton ball. So they had that. And that was like the little flying thing or whatever. The Quidditch.
The one
say the
trying
Quidditch?
To catch.
What do you call it?
The golden snitch is that small one of the wings.
Oh,
trying to catch that.
Yeah,
you catch that, the game's over, I think.
Quidditch is the name of.
I read the books. I actually just finished watching the movies. I think it was last week. So I just watched them a lot. It's kind of like it was probably better if I was 12.
Yeah.
I can see why, but
it got kind of dark. Yeah, after the dark. Fourth one, I think it starts to get a little dark. Yeah,
I think Prisoner of Azkaban gets dark. That's where it kind of goes.
Oh, and the Goblet of Fire. That's when it starts to.
And my thing was like, why didn't everybody? You know what I mean? Like, why everybody's got magic, right? And the teachers were glorified, but it's like when it went down, the teachers really couldn't do anything. And this guy, Voldemort was just like super overpowered. This is just super overpowered to the point where everybody around him was just like even scared of him. And then Draco's pops was like an OG in the beginning, but then he became,
Yeah, he is scared little cat towards the end.
Scared little cat towards the end, and the wand didn't work. And I was like, come on, guys. I was like, nobody got a gun? Like, let's finish this.
God.
Anyway. But yeah, it was cool.
If you finish that, you might appreciate the other franchise they have now, the Fantastic Beasts, which is, if you watched it?
No, I want to.
Angel, you
fell asleep. Sandra was watching it, but I fell asleep.
So, as you probably saw on David, if you didn't know already, but I think it's
like a prequel?
Yeah, and it's set around about 100 years prior, and then you see young Dumbledore, and you kind of see New York in a magic realm back in the 20s, I want to say, the 20s, 30s, and it's kind of fun to see how the magic blended in with this. Well, it didn't really blend in society because they're almost two different things, but you see the Ministry of Magic, the Ministry of Magic,
the Quidditch.
So, no, the Ministry of Magic, right? Like the headquarters in London.
Ministry of Magic.
We need to go back to Hogwarts.
Oh no! Oh my god!
In Gringotts, but the Ministry of Magic, and then you see it in New York, and it's different. And it's anyway, it's worth watching. But I'm glad you find it at the time. But I think if you go there, and it's just again, I think if you go there, or if you watch the movies when you're in that age bracket or that main target audience, but even the show on Broadway is pretty good. We saw it, and I was one of the best shows I've seen. It's long, and it used to be, the show is with 1 or 2 intermissions. I think it's 2 it's 1 or 2. I can't remember, but basically it lasts like over 3 hours, right? And it used to be 2 separate shows was one viewing. So it was in part 1, part 2, and part 1 would take 3+ hours.
Yeah, a client of mine saw it in 2 days.
Yeah, and they basically just condensed a lot of it. I when I watched it, I was like, oh, I loved it, and the effects were really good. And I was just, after I watched it, I was thinking to myself, wow, I can't imagine having to watch this, the elongated version, which was 2 parts, but it was really worth doing. If you guys get the chance, it's worth going to see.
I saw the play. I saw the play before I finished the movies. Yeah, I saw it a couple of years ago for Sandra's birthday.
Oh, there you go then. It's cool. You saw the effects then, right? It's pretty well done.
The effects were pretty banging. Now it all makes more sense because I was like, what the hell is going on? But now,
who the hell is this kid?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, so that was that guy's kid. I was like, all right.
Like, oh no.
But the special effects were dope. It was cool.
Yeah, they are phenomenal.
Speaking of movies, what movie did we watch? It's movie time. It's movie day. David had a great idea. Yeah, so sorry, Resurgence is the answer. But David had a great idea. David, why don't you tell our listeners about your idea?
Well, we're going to have a recurrent segment on the podcast where we watch a fitness-related film or documentary, and we will criticize it. We will, show the pros and cons. We will, share what we liked, what we disliked, what we think could have been better, and just our general thoughts on it.
Yeah.
And we saw Resurgence, the CrossFit 2021 CrossFit Games.
And COVID has closed, I don't know how many affiliates.
That's right. Okay, the 2020 games when they were doing it because of COVID. Okay, yeah, that's it. And, when everything kind of went to shit, and I guess the CrossFit community had to find a way to get their games going because people were like, what the hell? They train insanely throughout the whole year for this one thing, and that, the possibility of it being canceled was there. But ultimately, they did find a way to do it. They condensed it into the second stage. I think there were, 3 stages of the CrossFit Games, or was it just 2?
There's technically, I think you have 3 stages before the actual game finals. You have the open, the regionals, and then I think it's the finals. I think I'm getting that right.
Because what I remember is the beginning of the movie was already just 5-on-5, right? Like 5 men, 5 women. And then in order to get the 5, they had to go from 30 down to 5. And the 30 was all online.
Which is normally what the finals is. A regular finals is 30 males, 30 females, but I believe they, with local restrictions of how big a group, a number of people could be together, groups in this case being the walkout, 10 was the maximum, I want to say, in theory. So
I believe so.
Right, so it was 5 of each gender, but yeah, you're right. So that the 30, what would have been the normal 30, condensed to 5 through online virtual to qualify the top 5, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the movie just basically, just is about the games, what the actual exercises were. Didn't really go into detail with the lives of the athletes. I think maybe a little bit on a couple of them, but prior CrossFit, I guess, films or movies, or documentaries that I've seen had a little more of a, these are the top 3. This person is from this place, this person is from that place. They have a dog, a kid, all this stuff. Sorry. And basically just, I'm sorry. Is it the truck? I'll let you guys take over until this, stops for a little bit.
Is he stuck or what's going on?
Yeah, because in my block it's only a one way, and usually people, double park, and then there's a truck that tries to get by.
That's actually like here when there's a parking garage next door, and when someone's just like half parked, someone's parked on the other side. Anyway, same thing where people would be like smashing the horn for an hour. But Angel,
there's
go
always
ahead.
a panic with those single lane garages too, because it's like there's only one way in, one way out, and if somebody's trying to get out and somebody's going in at the same time, and then you got traffic, and it's a whole song and dance. But anyway,
people are very impatient. But yeah,
that is true. But yeah, so this movie didn't go too much into the lives of the athletes, which I thought they could have done. But I guess obviously with like COVID and the restrictions, maybe that was a limitation. Like maybe they didn't want to have like a whole camera crew and whatnot go into somebody's home. But I feel like they could have documented it a little bit differently. For example, like you can do like a vlog or something like that and compile like all these vlogs together and then talk about, you know, how their training went up until that point. Because it just went from like they were training to the stoppage, the politics surrounding the stoppage, you know, the other stuff, the extracurriculars, and then getting back into it. It wasn't like they broke for a second to kind of take some time for the athletes.
Yeah, prior ones they would do that. Like some athletes have a certain weak spot or strong point, and they would be like, "Oh, you know, I hope I have, you know, max back squats in the games," and then they'll show into like, "Oh, this is your back squat. You're such a great squatter." Because there are times where the athletes, for the people that don't know, the athletes go in not knowing what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, they never know what is on, right? They know everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses, and then there's typically and it can be potluck where the workouts really favor your strength or they really favor your weaknesses or a disadvantage for you if you consider your strengths and weaknesses. But what I thought was interesting, as you guys mentioned, they don't really go into their lives, but in previous ones, I suppose if this is almost sequel to one of the ones they had a few years ago, which was the fittest, what was it, the fittest on earth? And it was pretty much the 16 games. And there was a lot of different characters back then. As you mentioned, there was 30 males, 30 females. They really got to get a diverse look at who was there. And I also thought what was kind of surprising was, considering this is in 2020, I thought there was I would have been interested to look at what some of the testing were with, like how the conditions were in terms of, that's not why people watch it though. But I would have been interested, like, oh, were they having to test every week? I thought that would have been an interesting detail to put in, because if you are someone who wasn't aware with 2020, if you were born in the year 2020 or just a year or two before, like you're not really going to recall how it was living through that time period. And I think if you are just someone to then watch this movie 5-10 years down the line, you realize like, okay, everything was shut down. They're on a farm. Like, all right, you know, you might not comprehend the nature or the gravity of how difficult it was to pull that off. And I think that if you show that, that's something that really helps get that message across. That being said, it's maybe enough to drive home that message with the fact that they weren't able to go to Madison, Wisconsin. They weren't able to go to, I think it was the StubHub Arena prior as well. They were outside. So, and these places were packed with full of crowd. And they mentioned that, I thought it was really interesting, the athletes saying it's really hard to not get amped up without any music, which they probably train with, or hear the crowd, which is what they usually be competing in. And I was thinking about that a lot when I heard that, and I thought, wow, yeah, because I struggle to work out without music. And in a class setting, even if you have a good atmosphere, in the few CrossFit classes I've been to, there is music pumping. You don't really pay much mind to it because it's kind of in the background, but it's there. It keeps tempo. Then everyone's encouraging each other. If you're in a group, it's a very infectious crowd to be in. Like it's very moving. It's very uplifting. So, but in the games, you're competing against people, right? So you can argue that but I want to say Matt Fraser says, this is fine for me because that's how he trains. Isn't that what he said? He says he trains with not only does he train us, he trains a Tia Toomey, who is ultimately the best female athlete. So you have the best male athlete training with the best female athlete. That's not saying unfair because they don't compete against each other. But that to me was very interesting.
I think it's a good strategy.
It's a great strategy. But do you see it in any other sport? Not really. I don't really know
because
they
don't. Right. Exactly. And they don't compete like in the same time, right? Because like even in other sports, they'll compete in different times and they'll have like separate things going on. But here it's like they'll all compete at the same time, but it's just the men will, compete against the men and the females will compete against the females. And it was interesting because those two were knocking it out of the park too. It was like
it wasn't even close. Really they didn't even have to show. They didn't have to show up for the last event.
Stuff was like, well, they already won.
They were just and Matt Fraser still won of the men, didn't he? Even though he wasn't.
Yeah, even though he stopped and he waited for Tia to recover before they finished.
Yeah,
he just
to me that's wild.
They just both caught up. That was insane.
What did you guys think about? It's the workout, which is called. First of all, it's what ends up being. If I'm looking at this correctly, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it 5 or 6 workouts? But this 3 days?
First day was like 4.
Yeah, normally it's 5 days. This was condensed to 3 days. I think the first day has. Let me count this correctly.
First day was 5.
4, 5. 5 the first day. 3, 4. 4 the second day.
And 3 in the third day.
And 3 the third day. Gee, that's so much. That's a lot.
The only thing, the only thing I find weird is the whole 1 rep max back squats, deadlifts, and shoulder presses
right?
being done in the fucking middle of all of it after they've done their sprints and their like all their other stuff. It's kind of like, I don't know. And one of the guys is saying, I hope this guy broke his back. I remember.
Yeah.
Lost it.
And then he miscalculated the weight too.
Yeah, he screwed up.
Terrible.
He was 10 pounds lighter. I mean, it doesn't make a difference.
But they said that his coach was telling him that it was too light, like to stop. But then
that's what he thought it was.
No, I got it. But his coach was telling him no to stop because it wasn't the right weight.
Right. To think that's.
But you ever try to like load plates up? There has to be some science behind that too. Like when you're working out, it's nearly impossible to do math. Like your brain just doesn't have the RAM in order to be able to do it. It's like, no, I'm actually focusing all my output on lifting this weight. I don't really have time to figure out. Like,
I think with that,
I do and don't agree with that. Yeah,
with that, they're doing a total off of everything. So technically, if you would have done more on the back squat, you maybe could have had a lighter deadlift than everyone else and still win. So I think the math was based on every other number that they just did. I don't know.
I agree with your saying, Andrew, in terms of
get a calculator, bro.
That's what I'm saying. They were just sitting there with pen and paper, like looking at the numbers, looking at the plates, 1, 2, 3. I don't know. Unless that's not allowed.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe it's not allowed, but I also think if you're someone that's the other thing as well is, I suppose they're just reacting to each other with, oh, he did 4 or 5, I gotta do 415, like, and maybe you just think of it that way. But these are guys, they're working at those numbers. It's not as though they've never put 400 pounds on the bar, and now so that's the other thing. I
they all maxed out,
right? But I'm saying you're used. Yes, you'd be a little out of it. You're not there to focus on how much to calculate the weight because you just want to perform the movement and lift the load. But on the same time, you are someone, it's like if, for example, if you have a client who's never lifted or never squatted past 135, once you get past 135, those numbers are not familiar. They, like, just as us as trainers or people who are familiar to working out, like we just know when it's add this much weight on, it goes like you kind of get familiar with the numbers and adding up. But if someone doesn't go past 100, doesn't pass 200, 300, whatever it is, like you're a little out of sync, I think, with the number and the additions, just a little out of it. And we've all been there. I've done mistakes. So I've programmed someone, 75 pounds and I put 80 on, or vice versa. Like I've been there. I've been human about it. The other thing I wanted to go into, how did you guys like the fact that preparing for an event where you project? So this was the one. Was it not the Happy Star? It was the Ranch Loop. So you're told
that was fucked up.
You're told you have a 3 mile.
I thought that was stupid. Sorry.
Course, and you project your energy levels, your threshold to meet. You mark it to a certain point, and you reach halfway, but thinking that's the end, and then being told you have to do everything you just did in reverse. What do you guys think about that?
they've done some of that stuff in the Tough Mudders or the obstacle course races, where they'll tell you to like go here and then this is the end, and then next thing you know, it's like, no, it's not the end. There's another like couple of miles that you got to go, and or they'll put like mile 6, mile 7, and they won't say shit until like mile 9 or mile 10, and you're just like, where the hell am I going? Like, when will this end? And your brain is thinking you have X amount left. And then psychologically you start to accept that. But then when you're past that point, you're just like, where the hell am I? And where should I be? But in that situation, that was pretty intense. Having to go back and do it all over again. I don't know if it's something that they do often, but considering
I don't think they did it
like
often.
Those things where they just put stuff together and you're not supposed to know what happens next, you almost got to expect that stuff all the time. Like, you got to be able to just keep going, especially if they're going to pay you. I don't know how much money these guys got paid and ladies got paid, but if they're just pulling it up and the day of, they're just saying, you're doing this, you're doing that. And then 2 hours later, you're doing this, you're doing that. I would expect everything.
I think the workouts are told them the day before, or
but
right?
There was, I don't think it was, I think they did it per workout. Like, they gave you the next thing, but they didn't give you the thing after that.
They told you today you have 4, but I'll tell you right before what it is, correct?
Exactly. Okay. So if they have the 4 workouts, they'll tell you the first one, but you still don't know what the other 3 are. Because then in theory, you can start to plan to save up for those. Like, if you know you're going to do a 1 RM back squat, you're going to focus on those hills, and maybe you'll take the L if you're already in 5th place and just walk it, right? Because you're not going anywhere beyond 5th place, and then save up for that back squat and try to gain more points there. So instead of doing that, they kind of just threw it.
Told you one at a time.
It's pretty crazy.
I think it's interesting. Actually, Dave, go ahead. Sorry.
I thought it was, I mean, it's dangerous. I mean, they were all telling you how they could all get fucked up doing that. I mean, you're running all that already. And I understand what the whole thing about, you don't know what you're going to do, but you've already done some sort of workout like it before in the past, because that's how you, I guess, train for it. And I don't know. It was kind of like, you could tell how Dave Castro's, just his face is like, I want to kill these people.
Yeah, he has that. He has that look.
So so-called former Navy SEAL.
Doesn't it make you think, like, when your clients, you tell them to do something and they're just like, you trying to kill me? It's like, nah,
you should watch this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you want to watch this. Yeah, because the reference was in 2000 so when the games first started, 2007, this is where they went, this is where they started off. And then I want to say it was 2016, I could be wrong, they then took them there for some, or if not all, the events. So that was an homage, a throwback to and then someone such as Matthew Frazier, I think Tia Toomey would have been there. I think Dr. Catherine, what's her last name? How do you pronounce it? Daughter's dear?
Thor's daughter.
Oh my god, okay. Thor's daughter, sorry. Okay, there we go. So she had been in those games also. So those 2 athletes, those, I guess, 3 athletes had all had a taste of what the ranch was like.
They're all veterans. They're all been there for over 7 years.
Those 3, but I don't know. So one, the female, I was really impressed with that night. I think she was 19 or 20, and she had a
badass,
beaten up ankle, but just didn't complain. And one morning she couldn't eat anything, she didn't complain, and she was pretty strong, and she was very low key about it. But the reference I was making was, some of them who'd walked out at their ranch a few years prior were somewhat familiar with what the possible workouts could be, what they could entail. So one of them even mentioned, I don't know if it was a guy with a mullet, I forget his name, but they're like Greek Italian name.
I think his name was Justin or something.
Justin, yeah. Mullet. But he said something such as, you can train to do keeping pull-ups, to do heavy squats, to do strict press, the bike, whatever. You can't train to run those hills. You can train to run hills in general, but I think it was him, or it was the Canadian guy. they said how you can't really replicate that, or there's only so much replicating you could do. So that's why I thought it was quite interesting, because you got the strongest people. And look at Tia Toomey, who I think is an absolute beast of an athlete, right? The female who won. She was leading the female pack. And then when it came to going around the halfway point, she admitted it. She assumed that was the end point, right? The halfway, the turnaround. And that's why I thought it was interesting when she said, "Oh, I misjudged it." No, you judged it well. You were just throwing in a Joker card at like halfway through, and that just completely. Imagine all of us if we're walking out to a certain intensity, to a certain fatigue level, if you will, but then you're thrown in a span of the works such as all right, now you've got to do one more round. Oh, you thought that was one more, you have two more, or double. That would change a lot of dynamics in someone's workout and their capability of doing it in a certain time, wouldn't it? Would it not?
Yeah. I'll be like, peace, I'm out.
So that's where you got to train that fifth gear. You got to always have, if that's what you want to do, if that's the lifestyle you want to live, and if you want to compete at that level.
I mean, but that's all they do, the world's fittest. They that's all they do.
Train every day, I think, that's right? That's what I said.
So for the typical athlete or typical weekend warrior in the CrossFit world, that's not sustainable.
The workouts are hard as well. I was thinking about, so I pulled up some of the workouts. So let's go to.
And Haley Adams was the lady who was like 19 years old.
Yeah, the young one.
Yeah, that was wild. I think her back also got like ripped up. Her hand definitely.
Oh my God!
During the muscle ups, and then her back. Her lower back as well was like bleeding.
That hurts when it hurts to have a little open wound like that. Her hands were just all ripped up, right? And I think you saw when she put her hand on her waist, that the blood on the pants from. It just, I was really impressed with that. That stuff hurts. Now I am a bit of a wuss of that stuff, but did you guys?
At her age too, she was killing it.
Yeah, you should because. But it's funny because I know Matt Fraser's background is he did, David, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he had 10 to 15 years of Olympic weightlifting background experience under his belt. And then when introduced to CrossFit, he knew all the lifts. He just didn't do it at a certain tempo or the tempo that CrossFitters do. So he actually expressed the fact that getting into CrossFit for him was not easy, but possibly he had more of an advantage than other athletes because he knew all the lifts. He didn't have to learn them. He had all the loads he could lift. He just had to apply cardio, which is what he said. He says, my time off, I just work on my cardio. That's my biggest area of improvements. I worked on my cardio.
Because if your technique is A1, then you can also make the argument that you have less energy expenditure for those lifts because your technique is spot on. I forget what they call it in running, but it's like something bleed or something like that. Like it has to do with if your form is off by X percent, there will be like an exponential, switch in terms of, or an exponential shift in how much effort you have to kind of expend in order to get the same technique or, account for the same sort of mileage. It's crazy stuff.
No, I agree. I think it's, that's where we communicate to clients as well, right? When they ask, why are we doing this? Well, A to B to C to E to F to whatever you want to get to. But if you think about, you just want a healthier heart, if you want to be able to lift heavier for longer or have cleaner form for longer, and you always tie it back into why they came to you to begin with. Hey, well, you asked me to lose weight or you asked me to get stronger. Well, guess what? This is going to help you develop a better, stronger engine to be stronger for longer, or whatever it is. But great point there. I wanted to segue into, did you guys have any workout from the event where you thought, I could maybe do this, or I could be okay at this, or I could excel at this? There's any of them that stuck out to you guys?
Just the weightlifting one for me.
David, that was the one we do 1 rep max for the squat, press. What was the last one? Deadlift.
That one, and even the one with the Olympic lifts. I just have to work on the kipping pull-ups and the
so that was a snatch at each bar.
Yeah,
you had to do snatch, speed, triple. So it was for time. You snatch at each bar. The men started off in the quarterfinal at 225, 235, 245. Then in the semifinal, because each round they eliminated one person, right? So out of 5. So then you got a semifinal. There was now 4 instead of 5 contestants. The men's went to 245, 255, 265 pounds. And the final was the final 3 guys of women remaining. And the men, the first weight was 265, then 275, then 285. And you had a time cap, right? You had a minute to get all 3 lifts in, I think.
I believe so. Yeah.
What about you, Angel?
I don't know, man.
The one with the bike.
Pretty painful. The one with the bike. The running.
Bike repeater.
The bike repeater.
4 40-meter bike sprint and then 1 legless rope climb.
Yeah. Definitely nothing in the water. So they were swimming for a little bit. I would have died.
I was like, nah.
I would have been like, can I just take the 5th place? Save my energy, take the 5th place.
One of them said it. I think Brooke Wells is like, I got 5th place. Why am I gonna kill myself?
Why would I kill myself?
More?
Yeah.
Exactly. And it didn't, she's right. It didn't make sense. Save yourself for the next event. I felt bad because she's typically like a top contender too.
She's one of the top ones, yeah.
But at the same time, 5th out of everybody in the world, that's still really good. So.
And there wasn't much time between them as well. She led on a couple of events as well. And then I think that they said Tia and Matt, once someone got ahead of them, so maybe with the last 10-20% of the round, in terms of events, they would do enough to be ahead. And if someone got ahead of them towards the end, they just, like you said, that 5th gear.
Yeah.
Put it in and then just took over.
It's wild though.
I did like that swimming. Go ahead, sorry, Joe.
No, I was just gonna say it was pretty cool to watch, and pretty cool to watch them push themselves to that limit. Especially after COVID, where everything kind of stopped and there wasn't that much sports, so you didn't really hear about training or anything like that until things started getting reintroduced. So it was kind of cool to see people pushing it to that level, despite having that big pause and then the level of uncertainty, right? Like you didn't know what was going to happen in your life personally, or around the world globally. So, and still having obviously you got to have the resources to still train at that level. But besides that, just still having the wherewithal to kind of say, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to keep preparing, because at the end of the day, if they say next week, we got to do this, then I got to be ready. So.
Has his own gym at his farm and has a sauna and everything, to my understanding. Because I know I listened to him on the Joe Rogan podcast well over a year ago now, and he was describing about his training, about his setup, and I think that's something he mentioned. Because I think if you're someone that was in that boat of, I don't have my gym open anymore, and let's not forget as well, something they kind of touch over briefly is the whole thing with I want to say Glassman, the former owner of CrossFit, where he was very insensitive about what was going on with the George Floyd, and they don't really touch on that. And that was a very sticky moment for that sport. Something they don't mention. A lot of gyms that have the CrossFit affiliate, they pay CrossFit every year a fee to be an affiliate, right? And because essentially enables you to get, I can't remember what it entails, but essentially I guess you pay for the membership, if you will, and it like if someone wants to look out for a CrossFit affiliate gym, you go, okay, this gym here, this gym, as opposed to just being a random gym or random box. When they're licensed, a lot of gyms, when their licenses were expiring the end of 2020, they did not renew them, and they just renew, instead of it being Midtown CrossFit box, they would call it Midtown conditioning or something. So so they don't talk about that in the movie because it doesn't show in a good light. But that's something I knew about CrossFit, because I have a couple of friends who are still into it and they follow it, and they were telling me all this stuff, and I was reading about it, and it was a lot of, and they also the boycotting, right? They kind of, Matt says, oh, you tried that once before and it didn't work. So Noah, I forget Noah Olson, I want to say his name, and the gentleman who was 6 when it came to making the top 5. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah.
Him and Noah both said on Instagram, we're out, we're not competing. And I thought it was interesting. Matt's response to that was, well, you shouldn't tell your enemy what are you going to do, what your move you should be. he was implying that Noah should have gone to the games and boycotted when he was there. Said, I'm not competing, because then it has a stronger message. Did you guys remember that bit?
Yeah, I remember that bit. But I will say that the counter to that would be that it's safer to do that, because then you already give everybody the opportunity to kind of see what side they're on, and then you make your decision, right? As opposed to, and I guess any decision you make in life has, pros and cons or consequences or whatnot. And I think that, definitely you got to hurt them where it's impactful, right? Like stop moving, right? When all the cameras are on you and everybody's looking at you, just don't do anything. Just sit on your hands, and that's going to cost them money, and they're going to be like, what the hell is going on? But at the same time, if it's months after, some people might feel inclined that they owe it to, others that support them, their communities, friends, family, to say something right then at that moment, as opposed to not saying anything and then being silent, because then that's also a decision as well. But
yeah, one of the guys was talking about I forgot his name, but one of the guys, I guess, I think he works for CrossFit, was talking about like, oh, we couldn't like. One guy was saying how it wasn't done fast enough, about making a statement about everything that's going on.
He's a commentator,
something like that. And then another guy was saying how, oh no, we couldn't make a statement fast because of something, and I thought that was complete BS.
Oh, he said that we're not a reactive company.
Yeah, that guy. He was like, we're not reactive. This. I'm like, what are you talking about?
But the commentator said, weird. The commentator says, you didn't even have to say much. You didn't have to say, you didn't have to make an essay out of it or do just show in some form that you care. And it took a long time. And then the former owner mocked George Floyd in it, and I was what, like, really? And that's why a lot of athletes suggested or responded with that statement in the documentary, in the film, saying, well, that doesn't represent me, that's not who I am, that's not my thoughts. And it was also interesting to hear some of the athletes say, well, I've worked, as you guys just mentioned, I worked so hard in my life, just so hard this year just to get here, that it's not I don't care or I don't have any remorse for what's going on, but I worked so hard to get here. And I did see that point, that me competing is not me showing any support to what has previously been said or shown. And you competing does not necessarily mean you agree with everything, right? We all know that we've worked with people or worked for people previously or in some form of connection, right? That you didn't know of all their intentions, and if you'd known, things might be different. But that's in a lot of ways, So I thought that was quite an interesting point. The other thing I wanted to mention was, what about with the swimming? You can't train to do the bike and the ball slams and the GHD outside the pool. Those are never by a pool. Dave Castro mentioned, this is a great example because they cannot train these patterns with a swim right in between. Or it's very rare that someone has those facilities set up like that.
Yeah, I thought that was a smart idea to put those together. I mean, smart in what way, right? Like smart in the way that it's going to challenge the athletes, right?
They can't replicate it. It's hard for them to replicate it, at least.
Yeah, I wouldn't say like it's genius, because it's like, I don't know. They could have gotten hurt. They could have, passed out in the water and somebody could have died. I don't know. But in all the events, I think that it's pushing you. I think it's smart in the sense that they wouldn't have been able to predict that.
It's entertaining.
It was very unpredictable. And it's entertaining.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a majority of people go to the CrossFit Games for, because they're anticipating, oh my God, what are the things going to be? At least the spectators.
Do you remember the part where he said that he was going to have them swim in open water, but then like a month before that, somebody got eaten by a shark?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like, damn it. I was what the hell?
He also said that that's his ranch, right? He also said that the trail they did, that bobcat, snakes, and something else had been seen. Do you guys remember that bit? Cougars or something?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Well, they're doing it in daylight.
And I'm like, are you guys, is this fucking Survivor or is it the CrossFit Games? It's like, it's all entertainment. That's the thing. That, people go there to see people. People go there to see people pass out, to see people lift heavy weights and possibly have a weight fall on them.
to see them get as close to death as humanly possible and not die.
Hey, or some people are like friends and they're like, oh, we're going to go support,
One other thing I want to mention is that last one, Atalanta. I also was surprised when they said 300 pull-ups and it was kipping pull-ups. I was like, well, that's different. Like you can just bang, but that's so much easier.
Wild, bro.
But there's, and I'll say this, right? Whenever I went to CrossFit, toast the bar and kipping pull-ups, just a couple of things I never felt great after, during. Maybe it was because I wasn't used to it. I don't know. Though and I would suffer in the workout because of this in terms of, all right, 10 pull-ups in this. And I would like do regular pull-ups. I don't do kipping pull-ups. It just doesn't feel good. And it would slow me down because they were harder. Because people just like, pew, 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 like bang 10 out real quick. But 300, that's a lot. Because that's a take on Murph, isn't it?
It was 300.
1 mile run, 100 handstand push-ups with a vest. It's hard low. I can't even do that. A single body weight. And then 200 single leg squats, 300 pull-ups, 1 more mile run. Yeah.
It was 100 pull-ups.
300 pull-ups.
I thought it was 100 pull-ups. 200 of the pistol squats.
No.
Or are we talking about a different thing?
So Atalanta, what they did in the games was the mile run, the 100 handstand push-ups, right when you're inverted, 200 single leg squats, 300 pull-ups, final.
Jesus Christ.
It's a similar model to the Murph workout, which I want to say is 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, I want to say. I've not completely butchered that. And then a mile run to start and finish, yeah. So that's kind of, that Dave Castro just alluded to, that's where he got the influence for it. And just and then you're wearing, so not to forget that the women were wearing a 14-pound vest and the men were wearing a 20-pound vest. Mm-hmm. Which doesn't sound heavy, but it's hard enough doing that with a vest. So
I remember I used to run. I mean, this is nowhere near that level, but I used to run with weights in my backpack because I couldn't afford a weighted vest, and I was trying to. I don't know what I was trying to do. I was trying to prove something to myself, and I ran with it in my backpack. And the first thing you notice is that weight just sinks straight down to your lower back. So then I was like, damn. And then I didn't want to go back up. So I did that run. But then I used towels. So I put mad towels in my backpack. And still, eventually, the plate just finds its way, like goes through like all the towels just to go right down to the same spot. But anyway, let's wrap this up. Wrap this up. Do you guys have any closing points aside from commenting on my stupidity?
No, I find watching that stuff really motivating. It just gets me really amped up to. I hadn't really worked out in a week either, so it got me really amped up to go back into it. But I see that, and I really get motivated to work hard and to be successful in working out and training. That's just me.
Well, David,
yeah, I see that. No, I mean, I don't know. The CrossFit isn't for me. I honestly don't see myself ever doing it. And it's hard to say you do CrossFit, right? It's like, okay, you have people that go to the CrossFit classes, but then you have people that are in the CrossFit games. And I think those are two completely different people, But I don't know. It's kind of like, whatever it is that you're looking for in your fitness regimen, you go there and do it. If you like the community aspect of it, then I think CrossFit could be a good thing. If it'll get you going, it'll get you lifting a barbell. Maybe after that, it'll like show you a different avenue of fitness, right?
True. Yeah. I think like to my point earlier, there's pros and cons with every decision that you make. So it's tough to say whether it's right or wrong because you can look at it through one lens and say, it increases the injury or likelihood of injury, and physical therapists can reap those benefits, and occupational therapists as well. But at the same time, it can introduce large amount of people, and it has introduced a large amount of people to barbell training. Mm-hmm. And it has shown people that they can lift heavier than 5-pound, 3-pound dumbbells, which is empowering, and it leads you to continue to focus on other things than your weight, right? Like weight loss or weight gain goals, right? Like you want to get stronger, you want to be able to do a push-up, be able to do a pull-up, so it definitely diversified it a bit. So yeah. Anyway, good job, David. Cool. This was a good idea. Let us know let us know in the comments or DM David.
Slide in those DMs, yeah.
If we should keep something like this up, and we'll select like different movies and maybe do this, a little bit more frequently.
Cool.
All right, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.